Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes Reacts. I'm Dr. Dave.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
I'm Office Bloke Daz.
Collectively, we're the Office Blokes, aren't we?
We are indeed.
We have other channels, we've got social media, we've got a Patreon page as well, all that good stuff. If you click the link in the description, it'll take you where you need to go. And Office Bloke Daz, very quickly, is going to tell you about our new segment on the podcast channel. That's,
Do you mean Office Blokes Confidential?
Confidential.
Yeah. What it is, people are writing into us telling us what their problems are, and we are giving them worldly advice on how to solve them problems and what to do.
Yeah,
from an Office Bloke's perspective.
Yeah, bit of a roast, bit of a piss take, bit of fun.
It's funny.
And how do they get in touch with us for that, Office Bloke Mike?
No idea.
I thought I'd throw you. Drop us an email, officeblokespodcast@gmail.com. You can send audio, video submissions, or you can just send a bit of text. Try and keep it short if possible, because we've had some absolute essays recently, which...
Yeah, we don't want that many problems. If you've got that many problems, you're fucked anyway.
I'm not that good at reading, so it's a bit of a struggle. Anyway, right, so Doctor intentionally kills over 200 of his patients, Dr. Death. This is on the Infographics channel, which we do really enjoy, don't we? They make some really good stuff.
Is this Harold Shipman?
This is Harold Shipman. And I thought this would be an interesting one because not only is he from down the road, he was actually my dad's mum's doctor at the time she died. Yeah, she's not classed as my grandma. She wasn't very nice by all accounts.
So your grandma?
But I never met her. She was alive till I was about 11, 12. Only down the road, never met her once. But yeah, members of the family are convinced that he killed her.
Oh.
Because she went quite quickly, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into it because it's potentially an interesting but grim one, isn't it? So yeah, doctor intentionally kills over 200 patients.
He was such a nice man, a pillar of the community, said so many people who knew and trusted the man who became known as Dr. Death. Over decades, this serial killer visited the homes of his patients, and when he left, those patients were perhaps too often no longer breathing. But how chronic was his compulsion to kill? At first, it was thought he'd murdered a handful of people, and then it was scores of his victims, with the final number still being disputed. What we do know is that Mr. Shipman could have been the most prolific serial killer of all time. Harold Shipman was known to a lot of people. He was a family doctor in a small community, an agent of help, and over 2 decades he became a man whose face most people recognized in the street. This bespectacled, tweed-wearing doctor that looked perhaps what you'd imagine a small-town British doctor to look like was indeed a pillar of the community. But to say he had a dark secret would be the understatement of the century, because Harold Shipman, aka the Angel of Death, wasn't just Britain's most prolific killer, but he's up there with the most murderous criminals the world has ever seen. He was born on the 14th of January 1946 with the full name Harold Frederick Shipman. To his friends, patients, and colleagues, he was simply known as Fred or Freddy. As is almost always the case with the people we feature in this series of shows, if we want to try and understand how someone became a killer, we might look to traumas in childhood. What went wrong? For young Freddy, that was the death of his mother when he was 17. His friends in interviews years later said that young Fred didn't talk much about his mother's fight with lung cancer and how he watched when the local doctor used to come around to his house and relieve her pain with morphine. But it's thought young Fred was a very devoted son. His mother had gone to great pains to make sure her working-class boy brought up on a council estate, that's like the projects for our American viewers, got into grammar school. Again, for American viewers, this is a school kids had to pass exams to get into, populated perhaps with few poor kids. But Shipman tried in earnest to please his mother, and his mother became very proud of her son. We might also add that some bios said she was domineering and overbearing, sometimes a recipe for disaster. It said she pushed him too hard, and in turn he became isolated from other kids. His mother would foster in him a sense of superiority, but this would become a lifelong problem for Shipman, who perhaps could never get his mother out of his head. Still perhaps trying to please his mother, and with her painful, long, drawn-out death on his mind, Fred was determined to become a doctor. He would dedicate his life to other people's pain. But as we will see, his method of treatment we might perhaps say was overboard, a tad too total. Shipman studied at Leeds University Medical School in the north of England and later took on internships at hospitals. He was on his way to becoming a doctor and a step closer to becoming a serial killer. During this time though, even though it said he was a loner, he would meet his future wife. He was 19 and she was 17 when she became pregnant with their first child. They would have 4 kids in total. In 1974, he would get his first job as a GP or general practitioner. That's basically your run-of-the-mill family doctor. The clinic where he worked was located in a small town called Todmorden in West Yorkshire, which on the outside looks like a beautiful rural town, nestled between valleys, what a poet might have called England's green and pleasant land. But looks can be deceiving, because even though Shipman might have
Because it rains all the fucking time.
Todmorden's one of them places where you go and it's like you got all the little country pubs and all that kind of stuff.
It's
and,
nice.
It's not too bad place. And it's you remember you don't see them anymore. Morning drives. No one does them anymore, do they?
Not at all, no. Yeah,
I've not seen one for ages.
A long time ago. Wow.
What is it?
Yeah.
You might not even know.
Yeah, like, well, normally Sunday mornings, I'd say.
Sunday morning, you get a bus from the pub.
Right.
About
And you
9
go
o'clock. Well, go pub first.
Yeah,
Get
go pub
breakfast.
first. Yeah. And then shoot
Few
off.
pints.
And then shoot off on a bus and then go up to somewhere like Todmorden or Halifax or places like that. You know, it's usually like West Yorkshire way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
From our area. And or to Staffordshire, go wherever. And coach load of you, go down, and you go to another pub and they'd have a couple of turns on in the pub. Comedian, singer,
Serial killer.
plus other things.
Yeah, plus other things, yeah.
Yeah. It was,
No, it was like strippers and stuff.
right, okay.
So you go in the pub and there'd be like strippers on, and a comedian would host it,
Right.
and then they'd have a couple of strippers on, stuff like that, or you'd classify them as strippers, dancers. I don't know
That's it, yeah.
whatever you call them.
Then back on the coach.
You're talking
another
back on the
pub
coach
way
and then back to the pub.
Then back to
Right.
the pub.
Yeah,
He was in Hyde, wasn't he, when he was killing everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm assuming they were all there, actually. I don't know whether he actually moved there and he'd done some before, but I think they were all in Hyde area. But
yeah. It was that Ashton Hyde, G Cross sort of area, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of that way.
That side of my family are up in Hyde. You know, and that's
yeah.
where people were living, so...
looked like he was living the perfect rural life. He was at that time forging prescriptions of the opioid called pethidine. Yep, he was hooked on a kind of prescription heroin. He was caught and fined, but after some rehab, he was back in business. In 1977, he began working in another small community, this time on the other side of those valleys in a place called Hyde, just outside Manchester. Okay, so we should tell you now that we don't exactly know when Dr. Shipman consummated his curse and became Dr. Death. It's generally thought that he didn't waste much time and was killing when starting out in Todmorden. How many he killed is a number that changes by the source, but it was a lot. Hundreds. But how many hundreds? We still do not know. This might make him the worst serial killer in history, but getting the exact body count is not always easy. There have been a couple of deranged Colombians that might have a stake in the most kills count, and as historians point out, data from some countries might be unreliable. Then you also have some depraved rich Europeans from times past who also took great pleasure in murdering scores of peasants for their amusement. So he's now working in this small Lancashire town. He'll stay there for around 2 decades, and Mr. Shipman, as we have said, will become what's called a pillar of the community. In fact, one of the senior doctors who worked with him said that Shipman would take on a massive workload, and his patients for the most part adored him. He was said to be the most popular doctor at the medical center. What could possibly go wrong? The answer to that is his patients seemed to kick the bucket a lot, perhaps before their time was up. Psychologists have said that he might have murdered some of his patients because of the power it gave him. He became God, and the memory of his dying mother was never far away. But it's said he also murdered when there was money in it for him. In one case, someone's will. He also obtained large amounts of morphine by saying he needed it for patients that sometimes didn't actually need it. According to the Guardian newspaper, most of his victims were old women. That report says his first victim was a 71-year-old woman who Shipman got rid of in 1975. It was the eve of her birthday, too. His youngest victim was a 41-year-old man and his eldest a 93-year-old woman. Killing became easier for him when he left that medical center and started his own practice in the same town. You might well be thinking, how come no one noticed that there was this doctor in town that if you saw, there was a good chance your days were numbered? Didn't anyone say, wait a minute, my mom was alright on Friday and on Saturday she was found slumped over in her chair? And that's what happened to so-and-so's mother. And the other woman too. Well, apparently no one could see past the nice man in a tweed jacket. It wasn't until 1998 that the local undertakers in the town of Hyde started saying that it seemed like a lot of bodies were coming from him. Indeed, it was soon found out that his death rate was 10 times higher than other doctors. On top of that, many of those that died did so in the same position, like a drug addict that's overdone it. The mostly old women were sat upright or slumped on a sofa, and they were fully clothed. The Guardian writes that the police investigation in '98 was a shamble, stating that police didn't check inconsistencies of his medical notes with the deaths of his patients. The police investigation failed to carry out even the most basic checks, including whether Shipman had a criminal record, wrote The Guardian. But some members of the local community were onto him. Even a taxi driver came forward and said Shipman was killing off perfectly healthy individuals. Then, also in 1998, a former mayoress who had a bit of cash stashed away died in Shipman's care. She left most of this money to Shipman, but the daughter wasn't having any of that. She ordered the body be exhumed, and Shipman was subsequently charged with his first murder. The coroner, of course, ruled that the woman had died of a morphine overdose. What followed you could perhaps call an exhumation sweep. Lo and behold, the notes Shipman had written didn't match what had actually happened. Those bodies showed that morphine toxicity had turned off the life that had once been inside them. The notes also showed that Shipman had often made up a bunch of ailments patients never had, and he'd done that often right before they died. It was also found out that in some cases he told the relatives of the deceased that before the old bean had passed, he'd called for an ambulance, but phone records showed that he lied about that. The delectable doctor was finally becoming Dr. Death. Police and people of the town just couldn't believe what had been happening right under their eyes.
What do you think's going on in his head? Because it doesn't seem... It seems motiveless. You know, if there was money sometimes, most of the time there wasn't.
Yeah. Normally, you'd go back to like a childhood trauma, wouldn't you? So maybe it was something to do with the fact that his mother died when he was like 17. And,
a lot of people's mums or dads die by the time they're 17.
Oh, absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
It doesn't make him special.
But something triggers it, doesn't it? That's what I'm, that's what I'm getting at.
You know, it's amazing around here, around these areas, the amount of people you know whose parents or family were patients of Shipman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could have been a lot worse, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because he covered quite a lot. He did cover a large area.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, there's people in the family who think that's how my dad's mum went. You know, and she went quick as well. She was in, I think she was in her 70s, maybe late 70s. He'd been her doctor for years, and it was, who knows?
It wouldn't be a surprise, really, would it? No. You know, knowing what we know now about him. You know, it's frightening, really, isn't it? I mean, the amount of people that he's done away with.
I don't know how easy it is.
That's the thing.
And how it wasn't picked up, it's like over 20 years, wasn't it? He was doing it.
Police report, though, when you see some of these stories now in police reports of old, you just think, why? How have they got away with it? And what's happening now?
Why was it missed? Yeah.
But unfortunately, not that uncommon. This type of thing. There's been midwives, there's been nurses.
There's one at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
Children's ward nurse from a local hospital as well, not far from where Shipman was.
Mm-hmm.
And the frightening thing is, something like this will probably be going on somewhere else, if not this country, somewhere else.
They usually get caught, but whenever it comes out that there's, say, a midwife or a nurse, they estimate like maybe 10 people, 15 people.
Yeah.
But weirdly, it does happen. So is it a god complex? Is it like
they're massively sort of like everyone trusts them though, don't they? Doctors, nurses, they've got massive trust from the community, haven't they? In general, but grim.
The worst thing you'd think is that they're going to talk about your skin tag on your dick to people. Check out Office Blokes Confidential for that
it's
one.
Like when my grandma died, and he says she was on a death cert. It says she was ill, and I said, no, she's 111.
Terrible.
It's true.
Terrible.
It turned out that in just an 18-month period, on one street alone, 6 of Shipman's patients had died in front of him after he'd gone around and done his house visit. It was also found out that in the space of 1 month, 8 of his female patients had died in mysterious circumstances. It said in court he was still possessed with that air of superiority his mother had helped create. He lied, changed his stories, was apparently arrogant and unhelpful, and denied everything, even though there was so much evidence. In fact, in one documentary, Shipman's former cellmate explains that he never admitted to the crimes. That cellmate had tried to hang himself at one point, and it was Shipman that revived him. He took lives, but leaving a dying man hanging in his cell was not his MO. Despite this act of kindness, investigators said he tried to belittle police and acted domineering in interviews. He was treating this as some sort of game, a competition, pitting what he considered to be his superior intellect to those of the officers who were interviewing him. One of those investigators told the BBC, in 2000, he was convicted of 15 counts of murder and handed a life sentence. The town of Hyde was in shock, but the story would soon turn even more grim. A lot of people, of course, started wondering if their aunt, grand, uncle, or cousin had actually just passed away on the sofa in their sleep, or whether the now not so nice doctor had given them his most potent life-ending cocktail, the Shipman Sofa Special. An audit followed which produced a 2,000-page report. It was revealed that over the 24 years Shipman had been taking care of people, 500 of those people had died. That report concluded that of those people he had killed 218. Today, it's still thought that the number could be as high as 250. This is the number given in the sixth and final investigation and report. It was said that Shipman was addicted to killing, and his last victim would be himself. On the 13th of January 2004, he was found hanging in his cell. He'd used his bed sheets. The prison was criticized for allowing this to happen, but an investigation ruled the suicide could not have been predicted or prevented. Shipman's wife and children always said they knew nothing about his dark side, but they, for the most part, avoided talking openly to the media. So, what do you think about this man? Does his high body count make him even more evil than a sadistic killer? Or do you think his crimes were less abhorrent because of the way he ended lives? Tell us in the comments. Also, be sure to check...
It's
unbelievable, isn't it?
It's a crazy one, isn't it? Very.
I can believe that his family didn't know what was going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if it's a doctor, I mean, they're not going to know how many patients of his are dying all the time, because he probably didn't come home and say it, did he? Say, oh, another patient's died, another patient's died, so
It's
they're probably oblivious.
anyway, not all the time.
There's certain,
absolutely.
there's certain surnames that will die out. Like, Hitler isn't a surname anymore. I guess Shipman, everyone's probably changed from that by now.
Yeah.
His family won't be using his name anymore.
Someone's called Shipman over here, he's like, hey,
Yeah.
you're a doctor.
Yeah, with a northern accent as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just it's grim. And again, we'll never know, will we? That's one of
They'll
them.
never know the true count, will they?
Because I've heard stories that local reporters have done where that body count is a lot higher than what they're talking about there.
Yeah.
It's
Significantly higher than
significantly higher,
Yeah.
from local reporters.
Yeah.
But,
I guess they're going over, like you said, like a certain period of time, 500 people died, and they can probably go through the records and figure out which ones definitely weren't.
Yeah. But there'll be a lot where they just won't be able to have the evidence, I suppose, especially if they've been buried like 10, 20 years ago.
It's just-
a lot of them would have been cremated as well, wouldn't they? So, you know.
True,
But at the same time, it's typical half-assed Britain with their half-assed investigations that go on, and the way they do stuff, and the way they look into things, and the way they wait till someone's dead before they introduce the investigation into that. And,
Well, if people are coming forward saying there's something weird going on, and a doctor's got 10 times the deaths of the other doctors, then someone's got to be going, wait a minute.
There always seems to be a bit of a lag, doesn't there, from people flagging up and saying, listen, there's a problem here, then something actually happening. You know, it seemed to be still getting away with it for a while before anything actually happened.
Well,
the Martin Bashir interview we were, from the BBC with Princess Diana. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just coming up to the head now. It's just, when did that happen?
Yeah,
94, wasn't it?
I was going to say, it's a long time ago.
Yeah. It's
So
just
you
crazy.
see, and that's the way they do things. And it's the Jimmy Savile case that went on. You know, that went sort of like untouched out, despite many warnings.
A lot of people
and I think didn't Keir Starmer close that down?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
And what's he now?
I think it was sort of like, to a certain extent, sort of common knowledge as to he might be up to something.
It was
but
an
nothing
open
happened.
secret.
It was from the Sex Pistols that outed him on the show.
It was just Johnny Rotten, wasn't it?
Johnny Rotten, was it? He was one of them that come on and sort of like
Johnny Rotten, I bet,
yeah, he come on and he said he outed him and he went, he's in Sex Pest.
Yeah.
And everyone went, and now look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
A lot of them from the BBC were up to it at that point.
Big time.
There's,
BBC's going to be in big trouble in the next few weeks.
Well,
big trouble.
A lot of them, BBC executives and stuff, lived in this general area, didn't they? And there was loads of stories when my mum was in school. You know, it was like, you don't get into a car with that guy, and people knew that there was young girls in the uniforms coming in and out of people's houses, and like that. I was going to say where then, but I probably shouldn't.
Weatherman, was you going to say?
No, I wasn't. No, because he was into boys, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He wasn't into. My mum would have been fine with our Fred. Anyway,
but yeah, it's close to home, that one, and it's it's interesting whether the final numbers will eventually come out. I don't know.
It's probably unlikely, isn't it?
I don't know how it could. If they said the 6th iteration of the report, and that's the final, then no one's looking into it.
It's done. It's closed.
Yeah, if they're sure there's over 200, like 208 was it then?
218, I think.
Yeah, if they're sure about that, then there's definitely going to be a lot more than that in there.
Yeah,
but anyway, and then he killed himself as well, and Moppet. Could have at least had his day in court, couldn't he?
Well,
or was he convicted when he killed himself?
No, he was convicted, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Whether he killed himself or whether he was turned over, I don't know.
Epstein.
You don't know, yeah, exactly. But hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.